Hi, I'm Rob Vanstone. I'm here with my worthy constituent, Mr. Murray McCormick.
I'm pumped.
We're pumped in a way that might not be widely applaudable. But we did a Rider Rumblings podcast yesterday. We recorded the program early afternoon, and then just after 4 o'clock, everything changed, and, well, we haven't changed. We're here doing doing a podcast a day later to...
I have a different shirt on, though. You're wearing the same shirt.
Yeah, it'll do for another week. Yeah. Given the news of Chris Jones leaving the Saskatchewan-roughriders, we thought that another podcast was in order. So this is volume 2, number 3 in the Rider Rumblings series. Without further babbling and preamble, I'd like to get Murray to discuss his conversation with Chris Jones. He talked to Chris Jones this morning. And this morning being Tuesday morning, Wednesday morning. What day is it? And was able to get the first interview with Chris Jones since his departure. How would you summarize what he had to say?
Summarize how he had to say. I think he is. I'd say he's very excited about the opportunity. I think he saw a chance that he didn't think he had last week. He was aware of it, aware of the interest of the NFL teams, but he didn't know this Browns offer was going to be coming down the road. It happened. They interviewed him. They talked to Craig, cleared it with Craig Reynolds, talked to him, interviewed him, boom, hired him. It happened that quickly. Like, we're all kind of looking for different scenarios. Maybe it was some sort of nefarious thing in the background that Chris Jones is kind of twisting the truth on us, but I think it happened. Talked to him, reached out on the weekend, interviewed Tuesday, hired him Tuesday afternoon. And it was interesting. I have to admit, I don't get a lot of one-on-one time with Chris Jones. I have never had that. I think this might be my third time I've ever had one-on-one time with Chris, and it was about 17 minutes. I'm going into the background. You probably want more of the meat, but he was very chatty. He was very open, candid. He talked about how this is an opportunity, as I said before, and it's also, he's going to miss the rough. He's going to miss his staff. He used words like love, and he really loved, and he liked Regina. He liked being here, but he's 51. He's not getting any younger. How many opportunities is a guy going to be able to get in? Literally on the ground floor, because Freddie Kitchens is a new coach. I know he was with the Browns before.
So the ground floor has a Kitchens.
Yes, has a kitchen set. Yeah.
Sorry. Now back to the content.
And I almost want to do a little sort of corner gas and spit on the ground every time I say Browns, because as a diehard Steelers fans, we hate the Browns. So I have to get that out there. But Kitchens is a new guy. He's in a position, and he gets to be an opportunity. And he really likes the defensive coordinator, Stephen Wilkes, who had a pretty crappy year with the Arizona Cardinals that ended up being fired. But it sounded like they have a good relationship. They went out for dinner last night. They chatted, and they stayed up late talking football, as I can imagine, only 2 people. So Chris's job, it's in a senior defensive assistants. I would guess in a shorter term a consultant, but that'd be...
Almost like maybe a quality control guy?
Yeah, maybe a little
overseer.
More than that. A little bit more than that. Yeah, he's going to be involved in scouting, involved in personnel decisions, and he's going to give... Instead of he being the guy who got all the information here, he made the decision, he's going to provide the information. He'll go up the ladder to... John Dorsey, I think, is the GM in Cleveland, and he'll make the decision. I said the timing. He goes, the timing happens. Like, I really don't think this was something he was pursuing. He did make a very interesting point to me. He hired an agent, and when we were in Mount Tremblant last week, he said he doesn't have an agent. He's always done his own contracts. I mean, when you think about that, if you're a personnel guy, you can do your own CFL contract. You're aware of everything. So but the NFL is such a bigger league, with more money and more things involved, you need an agent. And this guy, Donnie, represents Tom Brady and Sean Payton from the New Orleans Saints.
So it's just a real average clientele.
Yeah, and Chris Jones. So we chatted. People don't know me that well. I asked him, how are you going to clean out your office? And I thought there was such a telling statement. He says, I don't travel that heavy. I don't have that. You can put it in a box and they'll mail it to me. Now, isn't that interesting?
Wow.
Like, even you and I would take more than a box or two to fill our little office
They
space.
might take us out of here in a box, Mer.
So it was a little, that was kind of insightful. And, and I talked to him about, I'm trying to think of some other things. I asked him, did the salary cap, the football operations salary cap, have anything to do with him leaving? And he said, no, it was the opportunity. He went on a little bit how I don't think he still likes it. He doesn't think it's happening at any other level of football, and it's kind of handcuffing and teams and coaches moving ahead, especially the Riders now with what's going to happen with these 4 positions. But it was insightful. We had a couple laughs. People can listen to the audio on leaderpost.com, and they can hear my interview style. And sometimes we laugh when we interview. Sometimes we tell jokes. It's not it's not always, back and forth. It's always back and forth, but it's not always kind of confrontational. So it was a pretty good day to talk to Chris, and the Leader Post were the first ones with it. And it's kind of nice to be first on something in a little while and have the Leader Post name out there saying that we are on top of something.
My take on it, and there's been so much talk about Chris Jones leaving the Rough Riders high and dry. That seems to be a perception that some people hold, and I certainly would agree that there's some validity to that when you look at the situation that they're in without him. But if you have a chance to go to the National Football League, you take that chance. Exactly. And I'm not caught up in, you have to be a head coach or you have to be a coordinator. If you're in the professional football business, you want to end up in the National Football League. You just do. Yeah. And if you get that opportunity, you take it. And suppose that Chris Jones is in a situation where he knows there's NFL interest, there's an offer out there, but he can't take it due to the provisions in the contract. Well, then you got a head coach who's thinking, well, gee, I could have done this. This was a dream. This was a goal. And I don't know how you hold somebody back in that situation. You're talking about the National Football League. And sometimes people say, well, he was a head coach here. That's a lot higher profile position or a bigger position than being a assistant in the National Football League with a kind of a funky title. But I would argue, and some may disagree, that any coaching position in the National Football League is of a higher caliber than the highest coaching position in the Canadian Football League. It's the National Football League. Yeah. That is it when you're talking not only professional football, but I would argue professional sports in North America.
And
how do you say no? How do you hold somebody back?
And you also got a little bit of security, a 2-year contract, which is worthless paper it's signed. And even he said that because you never know.
You never know.
The Cleveland Browns, now, folks, the Cleveland Browns are the Cleveland Browns for a reason. He's not getting hired by the Steelers or by the Kansas City Chiefs or all the teams they're playing this weekend. These hirings tend to happen with teams that are struggling and they're looking for some way to get better. And the Browns were better last year than they have been in a long, long time, which really hurts to say. I think
Baker Mayfield's awesome.
I think they tied the Steelers. No, I wiped that horrible memory from my mind. I'm never going to bring that up again. But they are a better team. They're improving. And it's the NFL. Like, you and I both started off in small papers, and we always dreamed of going to work at a big paper. We ended up here. We always dreamed of that.
I started off here. Summer job.
No, you had. Yeah, it's true.
Then I went to Lloydminster.
Lloydminster, okay. I guess so. But
they don't remember me fondly.
Well, I started at a small paper, the Times Herald in Moose Jaw, and worked here. And I always dreamed of going someplace bigger. And then we come there and we find out it's the perfect life we want to lead, and we stay. So what's wrong with having ambitions? The only thing, and it was pointed on Twitter, are the riders a bit to blame? Maybe not blame's that word. By giving one guy so much power that when he leaves, he just decimates the whole franchise.
Part of the problem is the system changes, but between them appointing Chris Jones and giving him virtually every position in the football operations department, and him leaving, everything changes as a result of this cap. Yeah. Had the cap not been there, they would have a lot more flexibility. As soon as the old model changes, then they're really left scrambling. Yeah. Had the previous rules been in effect, if you don't like the coaches you have now, TNT and bring in new coaches. But now it seems that they're going to have to honor the contracts of the coaches who just recently re-signed, and that ties their hands.
Well, they wouldn't have got him if they hadn't gone all in.
You have to give him all that to get him. Yeah. And I would still maintain that at the time that was the right call. Who was the hottest commodity out there at the time? The Riders are coming off a 3-15 season. They fired Brendan Tammon. They fired Corey Chamberlain, and they need to turn it around. So Chris Jones has just won a Grey Cup and you go get him, that's a coup. That's a tremendous hiring. And you're not going to get him by saying, okay, you come over here and be the head coach. That's a lateral move. You add general manager, you throw in vice president of football operations, then you can justifiably take him away from their team. They don't get Chris Jones if they don't load up his business card to the point where there's no white space left. Yeah. And that's what they had to do at the time. They did that. He didn't achieve the higher end results that they were hoping for, but he took a 3-win team, got it to 5, 10, 12.
And who knows what's be next year.
So still doesn't have a quarterback. Yeah, but he improved the team. To what degree? That's certainly debatable. Yeah. But it was the right move at the right time, and I think the results showed that it was a smart move in many ways, because the team's in a much better position now than the one that he inherited. But now it's a mess.
It's a mess. I was saying, this may be a little bit off topic, but I was trying to think this morning when I've been blindsided by Rough Rider news. Because sometimes you sense something. Like when Chris Jones signed the contract extension, we all took a breath. Yeah. Okay, everything's cool. We can move on. There's going to be no sort of drama or stuff. That kind of thing happens. Like they signed
you're basically waiting for free agency now.
They signed Zach Collaros last year. Okay, a breath. We didn't know how it was going to work out, but we just thought, okay, now a breath. So I'm thinking back about 11 years ago. I'm trying to think of 3 moments in my little time on the beat. Ken Austin quits after winning to leave the Rough
Which was 11 years ago today on the Wednesday.
So that one just surprised me. I remember in Edmonton when the words first broke that Chris Jones would consider coming to the Riders, and they're talking to him. Went, not the Grey Cup winning coach.
Yeah.
No, that's not going to happen. How can? And then yesterday, credit to CFL News, they're on top of this first. I'll give him a lot of that guy credit. And Chris Jones is leaving, and it's people coming. In the office just blew up, and they all come over to talk to us. And I'm sitting there I'm trying to process what I just heard.
I know.
And it switched my brain from working on a curling story to now I got to work on Chris Jones's story. So it's really been, the best 24 hours have been crazy. And the next, 20 days are going to be crazy.
Yeah, they've got to get this done pretty quickly because they need to, with free agency on February 12th, there's still some pending free agents that could be re-signed. They've got to keep going on with the business. I wonder what kind of Jeremy O'Day is the easy move now, but I think the logical move to make.
He's going to do it, and I think but boy, is this dream position? He comes in, he can't hire his own head coach, he can't hire his own staff. He's dealing with.
He can hire his own head coach.
Well,
that might lead to some manipulation of the staff.
Yeah, hopefully, but it's likely going to be.
He's handcuffed.
It's likely going to be from within. I would think. And this is based on my astute knowledge of football and stuff. It's got to be from within based on the salary cap restrictions. I really think. And if I was guessing, it's maybe Craig Dickinson. And don't write off Stephen McAdoo. Well-experienced guy until last year, was well-respected most of the time as a offensive coordinator and knowledgeable, and he understands the Chris Jones style. So don't write him off.
They can't do that, can they?
I know.
Optically, would...
Hey, it gets a different offensive coordinator, unless he stays offensive coordinator.
Well, he probably if he doesn't stay as the offensive coordinator, you'd think his influence would still be felt.
Yeah.
I would think of.
I don't think anybody comes here if he's the offensive coordinator.
If you look at the staff that they have right now, I think Craig Dickinson is the best person to move up.
As we said yesterday, maybe we're talking one of the nicest guys in football. You're never going to meet a nicer guy who's more in tune with what the people around him are doing and talking in family life and personal lives and putting on weight, losing weight, limping, son stuff. At least as a special teams coordinator, I always look forward to Craig Dickinson saying hi. And his brother Dave is the same way. Yeah. And as we know, he's a Grey Cup champion.
And a lot of being a head coach, it's yes, there's the X's and O's, but a lot of the X's and O's are also delegated to the coordinators, unless you're the head coach who happens to be the coordinator. But a lot of it is managing people. I remember talking to Ron Lancaster about being a head coach, and he says people make a big deal about me being the head coach in the offense, but you know what? I leave the offense to Ron Lancaster Jr., RD, as he was called. I leave the defense to Don Southern. I'm almost like a traffic cop. Yeah. I'm just trying to manage people, and when you try to decide whether to gamble on 3rd and 1, that's on my lap. And it's about managing the game. It's about managing people. If you're looking at that, Craig Dickinson of the in-house candidates, his amazing ability to interact with people, I think that would be a tremendous asset. And you also have to deal with the public as the head coach of the football team. I think Craig Dickinson would be, his demeanor suits him very well for that. Now the question is there any way they can go outside the organization? Because Mark Trestman is out there. Paul LaPolice's name is not going to go away as long as the Rough Riders are looking for a head coach. Yeah. Is there a way that they can work outside the prism of the organization and get a head coach while respecting this cap? And is there, can you
name an interim head coach?
I wouldn't rule out anything the way this week's gone. Is there a case for looking at this, going to the league and saying, okay, this football operations cap was brought in. Nobody envisioned an extenuating circumstance such as this, where a head coach brings in pretty much his whole group and then leaves, but you still got the group. So you're handcuffing anybody that you'd want to bring in, and these contracts are only a week old. Are there any extenuating circumstances where you can grandfather some of this and allow the new person to A, come in and be affordable, and B, mold his own staff to a degree, because you've tied the hands of everybody, and it's strictly a paperwork issue now. And it's only this is the first real test of this cap and its practicality and its flexibility. Or do the riders say, look, we want to hire the best person out there, period, and not be constrained by this cap? Do they say, maybe it's worth losing a draft pick or two in order to get the best people we can get at this point?
Yeah,
you know,
that's a good
you deal with situations all the time, or from time to time, where teams will say, okay, we'll trade you. As the New England Patriots traded a draft pick for the rights to talk, for the opportunity to talk to Bill Belichick. Coaches have been traded for draft picks before. Do you look at this as the Rough Riders and say, you know, if we exceed the cap, it's not great, but we've been put in a horrible situation. If it costs us a draft pick, but we get the right guy and we get the right staff for the right guy, do the benefits of that outweigh the detriments of losing out on picking an offensive lineman from Wilfrid Laurier in the second round?
Well, the thing is, I get the sense of this salary cap, it's a lot of fly by their pants with it. I think there's not as many, like, we can't explain it, really. We say the major things, you know, 2.6 million, 11 coaches, 14 football ops, and then we just kind of all let it.
And was anything like this accounted for in when they were designing this cap? Did they ever? This is the worst case scenario for this cap, because you think you're stable, you think you got all your coaches lined up, beginning with the head guy, and then suddenly he's gone, but you've still got all the tentacles of that guy. What do you do? Is there any way within the confines of that cap to work around it, or do you have to promote one and hire one coordinator?
Based on what I understand about and I've already explained, I don't understand it completely. I think it's got to be within. I think that's their only option right now, unless you throw out the draft picks and fines and stuff. And the Riders have the money.
Yeah, is that a price worth paying?
I think, yeah.
And can they make a case for, yes, we've supported the cap, we voted for it, but look at the position we've been put in here. Is there? Would they
put on your head coach and OC hat? Do you want to be the head coach and OC of this team?
Well, you get a really high draft pick the next year.
Yes. And I know it's the reality of the situation. They have no quarterback. Arguably, their two best receivers aren't coming back. Jordan Williams-Lambert, and who knows what's going to happen with Roosevelt. I'm not saying he may not come back, but he's a possibility out of there. You have he's
a free agent anyway.
He's a free agent. You have a kind of an aging offensive line. It's okay.
It's okay.
It's not great. And as I went back, did I mention you don't have a quarterback? So I think when guys take over teams, they look at the roster and they see what they want to work with and how they want to do things. And they look at this and go, oh, good defense, great special teams. Ew, I don't know if I want to dip my toe in those ocean waters.
Yeah, that's a tough one. And maybe it limits you as when you're looking for a head coach to getting the wannabes. And it's because even if you're encumbered coming in probably with a coaching staff that isn't of your choosing, and unless you're a real big David Watford fan, what do you make of the quarterback?
We can hyperlink what we do now to yesterday's podcast, where we expanded.
Don't watch yesterday's podcast, please. That's why we're doing today's podcast.
And I mentioned Mark Mueller in the context of something that I got mixed up on, and I'd like to clear that up. That I kind of got Mark Mueller and Nick Lewis mixed up.
Yeah, Mark Mueller is very happily
in Calgary,
still a member of the Calgary Stampeders coaching staff.
Sometimes
and a wonderful.
Sometimes
person.
I can't delete what I say, but sorry, I apologize to Mark and all his family and all his friends, and the Nick too. But anyway. I just wanted to get that there. That's a correction on a podcast. Are you allowed to do that?
Absolutely.
Well, we've never done two in a row before.
No.
What were we talking about?
I hope we're not doing one tomorrow.
So I'm going to ask you before we quit on this, do you have a Chris Jones moment? You know,
that's a good one. Well, my Chris Jones moment was his first home game as the Rough Riders head coach. It was a preseason game. And our routine as we worked it out between ourselves is, Murr, you get downstairs and get quotes and do the interviews. I'll stay upstairs and I'll finish the story for online, and I'll post it to our website and to the Saskatoon Star Phoenix's website. So I've got to touch up the story as soon as the game's over and file it. So that takes about 5 or 10 minutes to do. But anyway, by the time I got downstairs, Chris Jones had already begun his press conference, and the door was closed to the media room. And so I thought, I'll be as unobtrusive as possible, and I will just try to sneak in here and be totally respectful. So I turned the handle really slowly and then opened the door really slowly. And those door hinges needed some serious oil. So I was actually making it worse by trying to be quiet than I was by just barging in. So Chris Jones is up there talking. All of a sudden, I decide to come into the room, and it's like, and
it sounds like your body moving.
it sounds like my arteries. And so I wasn't looking at him at the time, but I guess he just stopped and just shot me daggers for the 10 seconds where it sounded like the door opening in the Alfred Hitchcock movie. And that was pretty much my introduction to Chris Jones. He just glared at me. About a week after that, the Riders held their annual meeting, and he was amazing at that. And I went up to him afterwards and introduced myself and apologized to him for that. He was great about it. Yeah. And the few opportunities I've had to chat with him, as we talked about in yesterday's now invalidated podcast,
the Riley stuff.
He was really good. Yeah. He was really good. But he was very stubborn. When he didn't want to answer a question, he would do the look in the other direction and wait for another question routine. It was like put bag overhead. And when he had stuff he wanted to say, it was great. When there was stuff that he didn't want to say, it's like you didn't exist.
What he would do, he would slip into football speak. He would talk about cover zero and all this stuff. And he would really get very technical. And we'd all stand there, our eyes would glaze over. Because we know how much of the population can understand all of that football speak? And that's what I know he would do. I know my Chris Jones's moment, and it's going to be a sign of how my relationship with him today was. Today, I never had a chance to talk to him. And I said on the interview, I said, Chris, I was just thinking, I think we were just getting to know each other, and now you're going. And he laughed. He said, oh, that's stuff that happens there. And I thought that was my Chris Jones moment, was today. And in 3 years, I never got to know the man. I'm going back to myself. I still remember you assigning me a 2,000-word feature on who was Chris Jones to fill our supplement.
Yeah, that became a 100-word story.
Well, no, and I didn't get one-on-one time with Chris Jones. So I talked to, and as a reporter, it's fine. You get other voices and you tell other stories, but you still need time with the man.
You need the protagonist.
But the Riders allowed me to. I was allowed to talk to him as much as I wanted in scrums, and I remember I'd see on some websites, what is McCormick asking? What's his daughter's names and how old they're? Like, why is he asking how their names are spelled? What's his wife's name? Where does he come from? How do you spell?
Why do you wear black?
Yeah,
I saw those. It's like, Murr has no other choice. Yeah, because he's been so boxed in by the regulations. You've got it. Where else? Yeah, Chris Jones's first press conference when he was introduced, there weren't any one-on-one interviews. No. So Ian Hamilton, who was working for us at the time, was assigned to do one of these profiles. And he starts asking all these general questions about his background and his childhood that normally wouldn't fit very well into a structured press conference, but there was no other opportunity. And then you hear the fallout about, well, why are you asking those questions?
Exactly.
When are we supposed to do it?
I remember when Eric Tillman was hired, things that made me look very good. I was on the golf course, and I was supposed to do a feature on Eric Tillman. It happened very quickly. And I got off the golf course, and I screwed over, and I missed his stuff. And Eric came up to me and says, oh, yeah, let's do it right now. Oh, give me a half an hour. He called me. He says, come back. And he gave me all the time in the world. I thought, wow, Eric Tillman, regardless of everything that's happened, I was so blown away that he would do that for a guy who happened to be on the golf course when they announced who the new general manager of the Riders was. So I can see that. I'm still kind of surprised at how we don't, as you say, Chris Jones is gone. We hardly knew you.
Yeah.
I can tell people if they wanted to ask, what do you know about Chris Jones? He wore black. He had a wife and kids. He lived in South Pittsburgh. He has lived in hotel rooms all his life as a football coach. That's what he did. That's what best him. Doesn't cook, doesn't clean, likes that life. Other than that, and
that's an interesting thing too to point out. I mean, he's the first Rider head coach that really hasn't lived here.
Yeah.
Some head coaches have had their families living elsewhere. I can understand that, but he's the first one that hasn't really totally dove into the community. And he was so immersed in football that maybe it would have been impractical for him to buy a home or rent an apartment here anyway, because he was just, I think he's one of those sleep in the office head coaches. But be that as it may, there was never really the investment on the part of Chris Jones in this community, and you didn't see him around during the off season. And a lot of that had to do with the practical factors. Yeah. He's looking for players during the off season. But I remember, I think Jim Spavital used to do every sports banquet in Saskatchewan. So did John Gregory. Ken Miller is still doing sports banquets. The head coach of this team has generally been more visible in the community, and he never was. And I think that's one of the reasons people never really warmed up to him. I don't think he didn't totally invest himself in living here. People just didn't feel that connection with him. When you have those opportunities to talk with Chris Jones, as we talked about yesterday on the podcast, it's generally a pretty good experience. Yeah. He's a pretty funny, engaging guy, but
not warm and fuzzy though.
But
he's not like you and I. We're two big cuddly guys.
We're fuzzy for other reasons.
Yeah,
but
we're going to tell people stories, but he's not. I would love to hear some of his stories.
People never really got the chance to get to know him. And you compare that to Ken Miller and Maureen. Yeah. If a lot of people.
You compare that to Wally Bono. You compare that to, guys across the league.
Kent and Shelley Austin. Shelley did so much in the community. And, Kent was pretty visible as well. And Ken Miller did so much. There was never that with Chris Jones. So people never really felt that close to him.
It's not a criticism either. And I think people might say, what's the reality?
It's the reality of the situation.
It's not like Daryl Davis of CJME is quite critical of the coach. And Daryl and I have had many discussions about this. I'm not as caught up in Chris Jones living here as other people. And I know it's a personal thing. I think, as I've said before, his daughter's a teenage. You're not going to move him out of schools down there. And I know other people have. His wife has a job. She teaches half the year. He spends 3 weekends at home a year, Christmas, New Year's, and Easter, and all the time he's just scouting. So,
but the fundamental part of all that is people never really got a chance to get to know him, whether it's the media, whether it's a general public. It was pretty difficult, and largely for reasons I think that are defensible. But the reality is.
So does the next coach have to live here?
It would certainly be beneficial. I think they
should shut up Daryl Davis.
There needs to be some kind of foundation where this head coach is saying, okay, this is my home. This community is where I want to. This community means something to me. Symbolically, I think it would be a step forward.
So here's a thought, and this is one I was having. It's like, are the Riders back to where they were in 2015? When at the end of that 2015 season, when they don't have a head coach. They kind of have are they a better team now than they were? They are a better.
They're
team,
better than they were.
But situationally, are they back to?
They're in a very perilous situation. Would you not agree?
Yes.
I mean, I'm trying to find a head coach in mid-January is not a good situation to be in, especially when
Dickinson. Oh, they've already gone that road.
You need a defensive coordinator, and you don't have a quarterback. And if you look at the Chris Jones, Willie Jefferson situation and how Willie Jefferson is pretty much gone everywhere Chris Jones is gone.
Yeah.
Okay. Now your MVP or your MOP, who is, I think would assuredly be back if Chris Jones was.
I think he's going to.
What do you do?
I know. It's just
Corey Chamberlain likes defensive linemen like Chris Jones. I mean, like Willie Jefferson.
Yeah.
Could you see Corey Chamberlain thinking, you guys fired me 3 or 4 years ago. Why don't we just sign Willie Jefferson away from the Saskatchewan-roughriders? Take that. Mm-hmm. Corey Chamberlain likes the pressure defense. Willie Jefferson's an amazing player. Yeah. There's going to be a huge free agent market.
You keep saying Corey Chamberlain. I think you mean Chris Jones, don't you?
Oh, Corey Chamberlain.
Oh, from the Argo. Oh, I see.
Toronto could be very interested.
Oh, okay.
So there's no longer, I think, the given that Willie Jefferson's coming back here. Well, that's massive, especially when they've already lost Sam McGuavin. The strength of this team has been its defense. They could very well lose their 2 best players from their defense last year. Their offense is a continuing mess.
Yeah.
At least a year from now, there was at least some promise that Zach Collaros might fix things. Now they are exactly where they were after the 2015 season. But I would argue they're worse off because after 2015, you could at least say, Brett Smith didn't play that badly.
Yep.
There's not even a Brett Smith right now.
There's not even a Tino Sinceri.
And there's just
sorry.
The cupboard is bare on offense when you look at the passing game, and on defense, there's a very real danger of some very valuable cogs ending up elsewhere. Yeah. Plus, it's a defense that was so philosophically based along the in conjunction with the vision of Chris Jones. So now you've lost the architect of that and the conceptualizer of that defense, and you may lose some pretty valuable components as well. So they're in a very perilous situation personnel-wise. The good thing is for them that the lovely parting gift that Chris Jones left for the Saskatchewan-roughriders is Paul Jones.
Yes,
the assistant GM. Normally, when you look
contributed to this hiring too. He knew people in Cleveland. Cleveland knew people in him, and they moved. The connections are like it's incredible.
Oh, the web and
pro
sports,
and like Bill Parcells and Mark Trestman are involved, and all these. I never found out. Chris Jones mentioned many times how friendly he was with Bill Parcells. We never knew why, and I could have gotten into that today, but we're moved on from that. So the connections and the webs kind of worked out for Chris Jones's favor. Now the Riders got to bounce back. I'm wondering, okay, Craig Reynolds hit a home run with Chris Jones. Give him that. Is this a bigger hire? Is this for Craig Reynolds to step up? Let's say he's supposed to meet the media on Friday.
It's a tougher hire because you can't wield your financial might like they did after the 2015 season, and there are parameters to work within that did not exist.
Yeah.
It's certainly a more difficult hire
from the team that wanted these parameters.
You look at 2015 and they identified what they want and they went after him with a knife and fork and they got him. And it was shock and awe. Chris Jones would have been foolish to reject that offer. Yeah. They handed him the keys to everything, and coming off a Grey Cup victory, and then you hire that guy when you're looking for a head coach. That's a tremendous coup for the organization. It's a really critical hire now because you've gone from 5 wins to 10 to 12. You want to take that next step, but now you no longer have your coach, and you no longer have your defensive coordinator, and you don't have a quarterback, and you've somehow got to keep building that process, keeping in mind the vision of Craig Reynolds that you want to achieve sustained success.
Yes.
Well, but suddenly you're really constrained by this new cap.
And not by his fault.
No,
it's not.
Through no fault of their own.
No fault of their own, yeah.
I don't blame the Riders for letting him go. I don't blame them for writing in the escape clause.
I find it interesting with the La Police stuff.
The National Football League. Go.
I'm the La Police talk, and when I think Winnipeg's saying they're going to allow him to talk, is that kind of the rumor is today?
I did see that on Twitter.
Why would they do that? Why would you allow? I know
because
why.
Someday down the road they may be in that situation and they may be looking for a coach.
And how do you say to your OC as an employee, no, we're not letting you talk to the Riders. We know it's a promotion. We know you want to be a head coach. We know it's your opportunity. But no, we're not going to let you go to our biggest rival. You're going to try to, so much about this team. You're going to come here and I think they play 3 times this year. I'm not sure about that. We're going to let you go. On the other side, how do you say to an employee, yeah, it's an opportunity for you to step up and be a head coach if you want to be a head coach? And
what happens 2 or 3 years from now if their Bombers looking for a head coach and they see somebody in the Rider staff they like?
In January, though? It's just weird.
It is, you never know.
Yeah, it's just a weird time to be looking for And I know it seems really early in the business season, but it's late.
It's late
free
in the game.
Everyone's got their staffs in place. And I know whoever steps into this job, they're going to have all the expectations, all the challenges, and
no quarterback.
Congratulations. And I think we'll probably talk about no quarterback for a long, long time because I don't think they're going to have one for a while because I really think, because we like to say Mike Riley, we should keep track of Mike Riley because I think he's surpassed Duron Carter's most mentions on this podcast. Do you think he comes here without Chris Jones?
Well, that's next week's fodder.
Yes.
And what a lovely segue that is into the conclusion of this podcast, looking ahead to next week. Or maybe tomorrow, the way this week has gone.
Yeah.
I am duly obligated to mention this at the end. Murray, read the thing.
All right. Jesus, one of the mic here.
I didn't read it very well yesterday.
Please rate us on iTunes and leave a review. It helps us grow the podcast. If you'd like to send us a question, actually send Rob a question, you can email Rob at rvanstone@postmedia.com, and we might read your question on the show, and we may even take it the extra step and answer it.
Thanks, Murray. That was tremendous.
I can do talking head.
For Murray McCormick, definitely read his story, the first interview with Chris Jones since his departure.
Yeah.
And definitely read my column because I want you to.
And it's on page 2.
Oh, yeah. We're probably where it belongs. Yeah. For Murray, I'm Rob. We'll do this again next week. Thanks for your time again today. Take care.